Hello, everyone. My name is Sinead, and you are very welcome to episode 14, I believe, of In Conversation With. If you're new here, you are very welcome. We run this webinar every Wednesday evening from 4 to 5, and we speak to two different students from two different courses in DCU, just to give you, the viewer, an insight into what it's like to study specific courses in DCU. And it's also your chance to ask some questions live to someone who's either studying a course, who has recently graduated, or even sometimes a staff member of the course. So we have a great episode lined up today. So at 4 o'clock and just in a moment's time, I'm going to welcome Emma Branigan into the chat, who is a graduate of applied physics in DCU. And then at 4:30, Cian Sutcliffe is going to join us, and he is currently studying sports science and health in DCU. But just before I start, I will draw your attention to the Q&A function that is along the bottom of your screen. And this is your chance to ask any questions that you have to people who are or who have just studied these courses in DCU. So whether you want to ask about a particular module, about an internship, job opportunities, even subject choice if you're in fifth or sixth year, and please let us know to the Q&A function, and we will get the answer there to you. So without further ado, I'm going to let Emma into the chat and we can get started. So let me just promote Emma to a panelist, and hopefully this will work okay. Hi Emma, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm amazed that this works every week. I always think it's never going to work properly for me. So thank you so much for being able to come on. I know you're flat out at the minute with work, so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And there's a good couple of students in the chat already, so hopefully we can give them some great insight into DCU. So as I said, you are working away at the minute, so we might touch on that a little bit later, because I'm definitely intrigued to know kind of what you did after the course. But if we want to start with kind of the basics, so for any student who's listening today who has maybe just heard that physics is a thing you can do in college, do you want to give us an overview about applied physics, or even just the general entry into physics that you can do in DCU?
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, so when I did physics, there were 3 streams. So it's changed a little bit since I did it. Not hugely. There's still the applied physics, there's physics with astronomy, and there's physics with biomedical science. But they have amalgamated all of the 3 courses in the first year to be like a general entry into physics, because you will basically start off and gain your physics knowledge in first year, and then you can decide okay, I want to go into the applied physics route, the physics of astronomy, or the physics of biomedical science. And they're all quite similar, and that is why they've amalgamated them kind of into the same general entry in the first year. And the applied physics is really like a real world application of your physics, so it's very industry focused. It's kind of like a more engineering stance on the course. The physics of astronomy is your astronomy and space science and cosmology and technology, which is also super interesting. And then the biomedical is more of a health science focus. So if you were interested in medical physics or x-rays and engineering and hospital science, that is more kind of the physics for you, I think. So I did the applied physics course, which was great. A really good engineering kind of look at the physics world, very maths heavy, but so many great skills to develop and really, really industry focused.
Yeah, no, that's great to know. And for anyone listening, yeah, you do your general entry. So no matter kind of what strand you want to go into, everyone goes in on the same level, and you work to, improve your knowledge in various areas. And I'd say some people even surprise themselves. They probably go in thinking they're going to do one strand, and then they completely change their mind. In your case, had you studied physics and maths for the Leaving Cert? Did you know what strand you wanted to go into, or did you just have a general interest in the area and you were going to see what happens?
Yeah, so I did take physics for the Leaving Cert because I knew that I kind of wanted to do physics. I also took chemistry, which I found to be quite beneficial for starting out. There are some chemistry modules in first year and second year, but it's not a requirement whatsoever. It just kind of helped a little bit for my understanding in first and second year. But I was interested in astronomy, and I kind of thought that maybe that was what I wanted to do, but I kind of chickened out in the CAO, and that's where the general entry is probably quite good to give kind of an overview of the 3 courses. So I decided that I kind of wanted something that would be more with an engineering slant. So I decided to go into applied physics. And then there was an astronomy module in first year. And I kind of realized, okay, now I have made the right decision here. Maybe the pure astronomy isn't quite for me. So it was probably a good decision in the long scheme of things.
Yeah, and especially since, like, even when you're studying physics in school, you're still only getting kind of an introduction into the areas. It's not like maybe business where you could study it kind of all the way from junior cert up, and you can go into accounting or economics, and you kind of get that specialism even before you leave school. But often for physics, that's not the case. So if a student then said, right, okay, I want to do general entry into physics and I'm looking to do applied physics, what would those modules be like? So again, for anyone who's listening who isn't familiar with that, like, they're basically subjects that you do within the college course. So what modules would maybe that you liked in particular in applied physics, or what would make those modules different from maybe the, say, physics with astronomy courses?
Yeah, so the applied physics modules are kind of, there's like digital signal processing and nanotechnology, and we do quite general mechanics and stuff in first year, which everybody covers. So I think that's a really good thing about the common entry as well, is that you don't necessarily have to have studied physics for the Leaving Cert. It gives you a really good foundation in first year. The first year is kind of a good rehash of what you studied for Leaving Cert. What else is there? There's quantum mechanics, which is really, really interesting. I find like plasma science really interesting. Electronics, there's digital and analog electronics, and some programming in there as well. So it's a really good mix of subjects.
Yeah, quite a mixed bag. So if we're taking a 3 or 4 year course, I believe 4 with an internship, is that right? Yeah. So if we were going to take kind of year by year to kind of break down, so we've said the first year is kind of general. What's second year and third and fourth year looking like then when you move through the course?
Yeah, so your second year is kind of building on your first year. So you will take some more programming modules that you would have taken in first year, just kind of building that knowledge. You'll have your labs once a week, which are always great, like your hands-on experience. I think there are a couple of choice modules as well in there, like renewable energy is a really interesting one to take for your applied physics. Then I think when it goes into astronomy, you're kind of looking at more like cosmology and space science technology, where the applied physics wouldn't really look directly at that. It's more like semiconductor driven and nanotechnology and nanoparticles, particle physics. That's mainly where that kind of goes.
Yeah, and then when you're in, so say second year, is there room for you to pick modules that you want to do, or is it all kind of set out for you? You know, the way sometimes you can pick different specialisms as you go through, or is it kind of set in stone once you're in second year?
Second year, as far as I remember, is set in stone, and then you have the choice in third and fourth year. Fourth year particular, you really can specialize in fourth year in kind of what you want to do. There's a big mix of topics in there.
Yeah, I think that's a common thread in a lot of DCU courses. You kind of enter and do as much as you can in first and second year to really get a broad kind of foundation. And then you have the ability to go on and choose. Because as I said before, there's a lot of subjects that you don't even get near for the Leaving Cert. So it's very hard to know exactly what you want to do. I'll just remind for anyone new who's come in, there is a Q&A function. If you do want to ask Emma anything in particular about the course, feel free to work away and we can answer live. So Emma, another huge factor in DCU is INTRA, or integrated training, which is a work placement system that we offer to, I think, 70 or almost 80% of our courses now in DCU. So it's a huge factor in the education in DCU. Can you tell me a little bit about your internship and where you ended up and what you did there?
Yeah, so Intro for me was a fantastic experience. There are lots and lots of work placements put online, and you can apply and you get your Intro CV and you apply through the Intro office to all of these companies, and then you go and interview. And the School of Physics in particular has prepared their students so well for the internship process. You know, there are CV clinics beforehand, and we did mock interviews to prepare and everything. So you're really well set by the time that you actually go to interview with a company. So I interviewed with, they're an Irish-based touchscreen company, and I did a 9-month internship there. So I kind of started in their quality assurance and general like internship role, and then went on to kind of do a little bit more work towards their research and development with the optics team, and kind of got my foot in the door there. And because I was working with, it was a really small team, there were maybe 25, 30 people based in Ireland, at like the cutting edge of touchscreen technology. I went to them at the end of my placement and I asked them if I could continue and do a final year project with them, and they were very obliging and let me continue on to work through my fourth year and work on the project with them. And then at the end of it, I was really fortunate that they offered me a full-time job with them, so I worked for 2 years then with them.
Wow.
in research and development. And it's just been Intra, I have to say, is the best thing that is a part of most DCU courses, and physics in particular. It's great.
Yeah, I mean that's such a common saying for anyone who's kind of comes on this. It's like intra is really where they got their foot in the door. And again, you can choose to do physics, I'm sure, in like lots of different universities, and obviously it depends on loads of different factors. But I would always say that like certainly look at internship opportunities, because it's all well and good, you know, learning everything you can and being in labs all day, but if you can't go out and actually show that you've applied the things that you've learned in the classroom, it's like doing a TY work placement. You know, very important to kind of show your skills. And I often think like internship makes people think, oh, you're making coffees and you're printing pages. But even as you said, like, hey, you might start off just getting to know the basics. Can you think of even maybe one time in your job where you were doing something that was like far beyond like an internship, and something like that really helped you then going into final year, like a project or anything?
Yeah, completely. Like I was working a lot with some of the touch screens, and we were testing like different types of glass and measuring like the transmissivity of different glasses. And I was writing reports, and these reports were going to people who were making big decisions in the long run of like, this is the material that we're going to choose for a product that's going to be on the market. And I kind of went, oh my God, like I'm only an intern and I'm doing this research. And that's where it is really exciting. And there are internship opportunities within the School of Physics as well. From second year onwards, they will sometimes take students over the summer to do maybe 3 months of an internship working in the labs in DCU. And those internship opportunities are offered throughout the third year as well. So if in the event, because it's difficult to get an industrial placement, like not all companies are in the position to offer industrial placements. So that's where the School of Physics is great as well, to have those internship opportunities within the school, which can be a blessing in disguise, kind of. I know everybody wants to go and work in a company, but if you were thinking about doing postgraduate studies, these are really good opportunities to get your foot in the door with the research group within DCU, and then think, oh, well, maybe I'll continue my study and do a PhD, which is very common in physics, to continue on studying.
Yeah, and again, for people who might be thinking of a career in physics, like, oh, what does that even entail? It kind of does go into two camps, and that's very broadly speaking, like research or industry. So the fact that you can, you know, toy with both during your time there and kind of not lose out on one or the other is pretty cool. So you spent, it was it 9 months you spent out on your intro, did you say? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you had a wealth of experience then, but then you had to come back and you had to complete your final year. And am I right in saying that in that physics course, you have a final year project to do? So you've kind of gained all your knowledge, and now it's like, okay, show me what you've learned. So what did you do yours on?
Yeah, so I made it was a little sensor, so where you could, it was for the touch screens that we were working on at the time. And basically I had like little microcontroller boards, and this is where my electronics came into play, and some of the modules that I'd done in fourth year, where if you like put your finger down on the touch screen, my little sensor would tell you that there was a touch on the screen. And so there was some programming involved in that. There was electronics, which I had all done through the physics degree. And then they were optical touchscreens. So all of the light and optics and wave optics that I'd studied through my physics, I was able to apply to my project. And that's a lot of the projects are so applied like that, and they're really, really interesting. And it runs year long, and they dedicate the weeks so that you have 3 days of classes and modules, and then you have 2 days of lab work. So you work on your project solely for those 2 days. So it's a great opportunity. Like you can do so much with the project. You can take it in whatever direction you want as well.
Yeah.
Meetings with your supervisor to make sure that you're kind of still on track for the project.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I'm sure people like continue on with their project or go into further research, like because you probably get so into it, like you know your learning doesn't stop or your investigating doesn't stop, which is quite cool. So before we kind of get on to maybe like careers and other aspects, in terms of contact hours and exams or continuous assessment, again varies from course to course. What is it like for applied physics?
It kind of ranges from, I think it's maybe 20 to 25 hours a week, but a lot of that is your lab time. And not all of it is lectures. There are many tutorials and seminars and stuff that run through the week as well, which are so helpful because the course is quite maths heavy, and like me myself, it didn't come naturally to me. I had to work at it, and the maths isn't second nature to a lot of people. So to have those tutorials and stuff was really, really helpful to keep up with the coursework. And then I think it typically is like 3 to 5 exams a year. We kind of had 4 or 5 every semester.
Yeah.
So it's heavy enough, but it's very doable. It's not impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you do have a chance then to do your own work outside of lecture times as well. And that's always encouraged. Like, you can do a little bit of reading afterwards or some group work to kind of just, I suppose, continue your learning. So you finished then and you graduated, and congrats on that. So did you go back then to work in that company, and then you chose to go on and do some research, or what was that path like for you?
Yeah, so when I finished up my final year project, I think I finished in like April or May time, and I was thinking about going on to do a master's in engineering, because that's what I wanted to do. I knew like there was a pretty nice scholarship attached to doing this master's, and it would have taken me abroad. But then the company turned around and they said to me, "We'd love to offer you a full-time position as like a research assistant slash optical engineer working with the research and development team." And I knew like research is what I wanted to do, and I was really interested in the products that they were working on, and really interested in the team. I think if they had offered me any other role, I'm not too sure if I would have stuck around, but it was my dream role. So yeah. I took that, and I worked for 2 years with them on some really, really interesting projects, and like put my physics knowledge to work every day. Yeah. And then in August of last year, I decided that I wanted to take a step back and go back into education full time. And I started a PhD in holographic wavefront sensing. So that's where the kind of instrumentation and my optics knowledge has come into play with that as well.
Yeah, if you can, it's probably difficult to do given the level of knowledge you need to do your doctorate at the minute, but in like very basic English, like what does the doctorate entail? Because as you said, it's or PhD, it's very common for students in physics to go on and continue their study. So for a 6-year who's listening today, if they think, great, I'll do my undergrad, then maybe I'll work. So what does the research entail for what you're doing at the minute?
So for the PhD, there are different kind of structures to it. Some are unstructured, and you kind of go and you do your own research, and some of them are you fund, but there are many that are offered with the Science Foundation of Ireland that are funded. And this particular one is a funded one, and so there's loads of money for the project, for materials and stuff. But I also have modules to take, so I have to take like 2 modules a semester maybe and study. But the research would be lab based. It's not so lab based at the moment, but there's a lot of like mathematical modeling in programming software to look at like how light bends and how light travels, and I'd be looking at like different materials and how the light will travel in different materials, and then eventually go to develop a sensor that would pick up like different changes in light and stuff. So it's really interesting. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, which research center is that with then with SFI?
So that is with Focus, so it's not linked directly to DCU, but it's an optical based research.
Fantastic. I did my undergrad in business in DCU, and I did my internship in SFI, in Science Foundation Ireland. Now, it wasn't relating obviously to the research centres because I was business, but like in their excuse me, like education and public engagement. Sorry, my throat's clearing. So that's interesting. Like even the likes of DC, like everything's so integrated. You'll always come across someone who has like been somewhere before and making those connections. So there's no questions coming in at the minute about physics, but again, welcome for people to ask anything that you want Emma to cover if she hasn't covered already, which you probably have because it's been so insightful this far. But for the student, and this happens very, very frequently, is where a student, say for example, loves to do physics, but they also have another interest, say it's dancing or drama, and they think that the two can't marry. In college they have to pick one or the other, but I'd often encourage that there's clubs and societies that people can get in and be super involved with, no matter what course you're studying in DCU. So did you have much involvement with any clubs or societies while you were on campus?
Yeah, so I was really heavily involved in the book society, which I absolutely adored because I loved reading and the people were really great. We did some really great things, like we went on trips abroad, we went to Berlin one year, which was really historical and so interesting. And then I was involved on the committee in the book society. So I started off in first year as like a first year rep, where it's just representing the first years on the committee, and you kind of attend the committee meetings and see how the club is run, which is really interesting. And then I went on to be the secretary of the book society. So we were kind of involved in like the meetings and organizing the trips away and like the running of the club. And then I took a step back in third year because I wasn't on campus really when I was doing my internship, but then went back in fourth year and it was great. Like, it was so nice to be involved with like a similar group of people all of the time. Like, the people who you start off with in first year tend to stick with the club, so it's nice to have some familiar faces to meet up with once a week. And I was also involved in the archery club as well on campus. A lot of my friends through physics introduced me to that one. It wouldn't have been one that I would have thought about joining, but there's some great stress relief in shooting an arrow at some targets, I have to say.
I'd imagine so. I'd say you're close to buying your own bow and arrow now at this stage, just to keep occupied. But no, like a fantastic example, as you said, like you can join DCU and find this society that you never heard of before. And it doesn't matter what course you're doing, you can just join, pay your €3 or €4 upon membership, and that's it. And you can go on and enjoy it from there. And I love that you were so involved in the book society, because I think, again, there's a perception that if you're doing maybe science or engineering, you're just going to be too busy to do anything else. But really, it's probably more beneficial, because even for your CV now, like, not only would you have the experience of the course and the modules, but also like other examples of things that aren't necessarily related to academia. And even for your own, just like, as you said, to just like release some steam, or just to stress out and not talk about physics for a couple of minutes. I'd say that was bliss. Again, no more questions coming in, but guys, please do know that you can ask if you do have anything. For a 6 year today who's maybe looking, and because you have gone through, most of the process that maybe they hope to, any tips that you could give in hindsight now that might make the journey easier into third level, or maybe just something different?
Yeah, so one of the major things I think that I found just with the course content in the beginning was that I came from an all-girls school and there was kind of limited subjects that were offered, and applied maths is a Leaving Cert subject and it's not offered in all schools. And I'm not saying to anybody that they need to go out now and take up an extra Leaving Cert subject, because the stress of the Leaving Cert is enough. Yeah. But to kind of just be aware that that is a subject is really useful. Like, it was kind of said to me when I started, like, people were like, "Oh, did you study applied maths?" And I said, "No." And I kind of struggled with the mechanics on the applied maths side of things, just because I hadn't come across the concepts before. But to go out and, like, first of all, the tutorials and the teachers are brilliant. So that's the first port of call, and the Maths Learning Centre in the library is the second. But then I went and I bought the applied maths book, or the Leaving Cert applied maths book, and there's so many resources online as well for the Leaving Cert course. That was the one thing, that was the one subject that when I started out, I struggled with a little bit. I also struggled, I think, just with coming from like an all-girls school into a really male-dominated course. Yeah. Was such a massive change, and to learn like how to deal, because the guys seemed to just grasp the physics without a problem, and I was kind of grasping for air a little bit, but it just takes some time. Like, it's just adjusting to like a completely new way of studying and a completely new way of interacting with people and your lecturers and everything.
Yeah, and I love that as well, that you mentioned about kind of reaching out and seeing who can help, because the supports in DCU are there to help students, the likes of the Maths Learning Centre, and people don't know that it exists often until they need it. But it's literally a free service in the DCU library that you can go into, and there's people there who are fantastic at maths, and it's their job to be there and to help you with your problems. So again, whether you're studying like sincerely hard maths like you would be in physics, or like a lighter, say, like accounting question in business, they are there to help you with that. And again, it's free of charge. If you want to camp your tent there all night and study, you can do that. So it's an amazing way. So like, if you are worried about entering and concerned about your maths or anything, there are services there that can help you. Just one thing that we haven't really touched off yet, and just before I let you go, time is absolutely flying by. So obviously you kind of chose to go down that like the research path after working in the industry for a while. Could you, off the top of your head, list some other careers that people could be able to go into after applied physics, in case someone's listening going, I'm not sure if I'd be into the research, I want to like do something like something else?
Yeah, 100%. That was the one thing that I was always asked throughout my time as a physics student. People were going, "Well, what are you going to do? There's not that many physicist jobs, like it's quite it can be quite a narrow field if you make it a narrow field." And it is definitely not, because you have like really good data handling skills, really good problem solving skills, the ability to just think outside the box and be proficient with numbers and handling problems like that. is such an invaluable skill, especially at the moment, like in technology companies. Like there's some massive technology companies in Dublin. But I know a guy, he's working as a risk analyst in a financial company. I know a girl who's working down in Intel. A lot of people, as I said, go on to do further research, but like there are really good industry jobs out there for physicists, and it doesn't have to be a really physics specific job, just because like there's such a broad skill set.
That's a huge thing as well that you mentioned, is those transferable skills that go across. I remember reading an article recently, and they were saying that like people graduating now or in the last couple of years are going to have something crazy like 14 different jobs in their life, and that it's less about this one job that you're ultimately going to do forever. It's more you're going to like navigate through different careers, but it's about the skills that you bring in between. And again, I think a very important ethos for DCU is having those skills, not necessarily like you need to know specific knowledge about something really particular in physics, more so like, okay, well, I actually learned this in this module, but actually I think I can apply that here, or I can like, marry the two together to see what you learned. So again, for people watching who aren't really sure what field they want to go into, and they're not sure, you don't have to know that in sixth year. You don't have to know that in fourth year. You don't have to know that when you've graduated, because really there isn't an answer. Like it's going to change frequently depending on your interests and what you discover in university as well. And again, just goes back to the point that if you do a general entry course, it means that you have that year to kind of toy around with different ideas and see what you want to go into. So again, no more questions coming in. So just before I let you go, Emma, do you have a favorite memory in DCU, or one thing that you just absolutely loved about the place?
Oh God, this is going to sound a bit sad, but I have to say one of my favorite things was sitting over in the physics building preparing for our exams. Like all of us were packed into one room going, we're so close to the end now. Like there was a girl wrapped up in a blanket, everybody's drinking tea, and it's just like that nice camaraderie of everybody in the course all pulling together to like make sure that person understands that question to pass the exam, or not even to pass the exam, but to just like push them up a level in their exam, and like not moving past it until that person understood. And it really was the teamwork and the camaraderie. I think that was my favorite part of DCU, because it was such a small course as well. Like I've got friends for life out of that course. It's just been amazing. So I think that's like the one memory that always stands out. I always think back to sitting over in the physics building, pulling our hair out over exam questions, but it's just been so worth it.
Yeah, and that camaraderie with everyone. And by the time you're in fourth year, like you are family with the people that, like, I mean, you've grown up together. Those very like important years of your life you've spent with these people, and you just want to see everyone succeed by the end of it. Like it's not competitive anymore, like if it ever was. But Emma, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll let you go, unless I don't think there's any more questions coming in. But again, thank you so much. I know you're flat out, but hopefully this will really help students who are interested in physics and they've been able to gain insight from someone who has done it, who's potentially walked in their shoes. So I'll remove you from this so you can, and feel free to hang out if you want to watch the rest, but obviously go about your day if that's what you want to do. So I'm going to remove Emma now. Thank you very much, Emma, for joining us, and hope to chat to you soon. No problem at all. So that was Emma Branigan chatting to us. She is a graduate of Applied Physics in DCU. So in a couple of minutes' time, we are going to welcome Cian Sutcliffe into the chat. I'm just going to turn off my camera and everything. If you want to grab a drink of water or anything, if you've stuck around for this time, you want to take a little break. But I will see you back here in 2 minutes' time to talk about sports science and health. So see you then.